Y'all want to explain what happened? Kaiser, did you lock your sister in her kennel?
So, I'm not a huge fan of videos that make me sad. So if you're looking for a video that's not going to make you sad, go somewhere else. The bottom line up front, there's no real happy ending to this. I lost both Kaiser and Sniper this summer. So it just sucked. It's been a miserable summer. But I thought I would kind of recap their lives and pay tribute to them and then talk about what's next. Maybe with this channel and with Luna in particular, because she's all I got left. So start with Sniper. I came back from deployment in 2009. I really wanted a dog. I wanted a German Shepherd, big German Shepherd. I was looking for, police dog style German Shepherd. And couldn't find a dog, went to a couple shelters, nothing seemed to be a good fit. And then as I was finally moving into a house with my then fiance, we went to a website and they had listed dogs, and this dog was named Rocky. And Rocky was a German Shepherd, or at least that's what Rocky's profile said. And we went to the Miami-Dade Kill Shelter, and they said that he had 3 days left. He was in a kill shelter that gave him 7 days, and he was on day 4, and he had 3 days left. And the moment I met him, he was obsessed with me. He just, it clicked for him like instantaneously. He came to me and was, trying to get me to pet him and stuff and just sitting on my foot, and he was a good dog. And so the girl I was with at the time actually ended up adopting a dog too, so we had 3 dogs. And at first, Sniper and I weren't that close. He was still kind of a puppy, and I really liked my girlfriend's dog at the time. And Sniper was still, getting all that puppy energy out. But I was trying to train him, and I thought he was going to be this big German Shepherd. Turns out he lied, which I wouldn't hold against him. But it wasn't until my fiance and I broke up that Sniper and I became really good buddies. I remember the first time it really clicked was when my dad and stepmom and brother had the RV, and they were going to meet me, I think around Tallahassee. I was living in Miami, and I brought Sniper with me, and he did so well. And I was like, man, he's a good dog. And then that Christmas, I took Sniper with me on the road trip, 19 hours from Homestead to where my parents lived. And I realized that Sniper was my little buddy. And so things didn't work out with the fiance, obviously, and I started looking for a buddy for Sniper, because I felt like with my schedule, I didn't want Sniper to be alone, because that's what he was, because he didn't have his sisters anymore. And so a friend of mine in the squadron, guy who was working for me, Master Sergeant, his wife was working with a rescue, and they had a puppy, and it was a Belgian Malinois looking dog. And they said that they had found him in the street. He was 8 weeks old. Cars were honking at him, trying to get him out of the road. And some guy stopped and picked him up, and that's how they did it. And I said, well, I'll foster him and see how it works out. And Kaiser became my dog because I was a foster failure. Sniper was a little jealous at first, but eventually they became buddies. And Sniper and Kaiser became my best friends. They were there for me for everything. And so eventually I got hired by the Navy, and we moved to Louisiana, and Kaiser loved the backyard, and Sniper loved the pool monster, and all that stuff. And things were great. Then about a year later, my dad had his surgery, and my dad was convinced he was going to die in surgery. He didn't think he was going to make it through. But the boys were there to comfort him, and my dad loved taking him up and down the road on the golf cart with them running next to him, and he just loved those dogs. It was so funny. The first time my dad met Kaiser, Kaiser growled, And my dad was so afraid of him. And turns out there was nothing to be afraid of because Kaiser was just a big teddy bear. And so my dad had his surgery, and 3 weeks later, he passed away. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever been through. And throughout it all, those boys were with me, because I always said that no matter what happens to me, I wanted to make sure that they had a place. Because when I was in college, I had a dog, and I had to give him up because I was moving to an apartment that didn't allow dogs. And I always felt bad about that. And I said, when I got these dogs, they would always have a place. And that's what pushed me through. That's what got me through the tough times, was knowing that I needed to be there for them because they were there for me. And they really, really helped me. I mean, right around the time, the exact time, right after my dad died, my girlfriend broke up with me like the day he died. And so it's kind of a rough period in my life, but they were there. And in 2014, things started to kind of take a turn health-wise. Kaiser tore his ACL, CCL, cruciate collateral ligament. And I took him, he was at my stepmom's house, and I took him to the vet, and they didn't do the TPLO, which is the bigger surgery, because this vet recommended doing a lateral sutural procedure, which is just like fishing line wrapped around. And I regret that because it wasn't a very stable operation, especially for Kaiser's size, because he's lanky. But it worked, and until the day he died, it actually was still holding together. So, but not as well as the TPLO. But from that point, Kaiser started to get arthritis. He kind of slowed down a little bit, and things were what they were. They were good dogs, and they were there. We had a doggy door. I loved them, and they were there for me. And as we progressed, as they got older, Kaiser needed the other knee, so then we did the TPLO for that knee. Sniper had his first knee problem during COVID. And the stupidest of things, we were at the vet, and he fell out of the back trying to jump down, and the leash caught him and spun him around because I was trying to get both of them at the same time. But 2021 came around, and I got Luna in the December of 2020. And at first, I almost took her back because, and I talked about this on the channel, I didn't think the boys liked her.
Tell me. Really? So should she go back or stay? Immediate? You don't want her to stay?
And the boys getting older, they're my life. I never had kids, I thought they were my kids. And so I didn't want to do anything to disrupt them, especially in the time that I had left with them, even though I never wanted to admit that there was anything less than 1,000,000 years left with them. And Luna loved them, but they were kind of like, I don't know. And so Sniper at this time had this cough. And he'd had the cough for a really long time, and we attributed it to environmental factors. We just never thought anything of it, because it was only in certain times and agitated by certain conditions. But it started to get worse. And I took him to the vet in 2021, and we did the x-ray, and they found something and said, you need to take him to an oncologist. So I took him to the oncologist, and they said, hey, he's got a mass, he's got a tumor, but we think it's isolated. We can do a surgery, remove that lobe, and he'll hopefully be okay. But they warned me. They said, best case, the time that this gives him is about a year, 14 months. And I said, well, I don't want to believe that, but I'll take any amount of time because I love Sniper. He was my best buddy. And so, Luna was still going through her training and stuff, and Kaiser was still doing pretty well. He was a little slower arthritis-wise, but we were still running and doing stuff. And so we did the surgery, and it went well, and they said, yep, we think we got it all. And so, you're good to go. And he was great. He started coughing a little bit after a couple weeks, and we thought, well, that's just residual. But that was 2021. So we continued. Luna grew up and became a great dog. Still harassed them, but they were teaching her, and she loved them. So summer of 2022, I lost my flying job in the Air Force. It was kind of a bad time for me, but they were there for me, you know, as they always were. And then Sniper needed another knee surgery, and he had just had the lung stuff. And I'm like, you know, I hate to do this. We had prolonged it with some alternative therapies, but you know, they said, hey, this time it's really torn, so he's going to need it. And I'm like, well, you know, let's do it. Let's get this done. And while Sniper was out, my girlfriend's dog suddenly fell ill, and when they did the ultrasound, they found all kinds of cancer everywhere and inoperable. There was no treatment. And so for the first time in my life, I was there when, you know, we euthanized a dog, helped him cross the Rainbow Bridge. And it was pretty traumatic for me. And Kaiser, around this dog, he was a black lab, had just gotten a lot of pep in his step. Like he had gotten a second wind because he just loved being around this dog. But after, his name was Bubba, after Bubba died, Kaiser kind of got depressed. And then one night, Luna, so, you know, we talked about Luna breaking her foot when she was a baby in another vlog. But while Sniper was gone shortly after, I was in my office one night and Luna came in and she was like coughing and hacking. And I was like, what is going on? And I walked in here in the living room and I sat down on the floor with her trying to figure out what was going on because she wouldn't stop like wheezing. And Kaiser came up to me and like he put his big strong nose under my arm and lifted me up and was like poking me with his nose like, Dad, you got to do something. So I rushed her to the med vet, and as I got her there, she stopped breathing. And I was super, super nervous about it. They got her breathing again. Don't know what happened. You know, I think her collar got caught under the bed and she collapsed her trachea because there was a big bruise when they shaved her neck. Could have been an allergic reaction, could have been something stung her. We really don't know, but it was a big scare. We almost lost her. And so we got Sniper back and he started coughing, and he coughed a lot and it got worse. And I was just like, man, I just don't know. And we gave him some cough tabs and some steroids and stuff to try to manage it because we thought maybe it was from the surgery or whatever. And around this time too, Kaiser started falling off. And he was diagnosed with lumbral sacral degenerative disease because he's starting to lose feeling in his back legs. I thought it was his front because he had arthritis in his front legs too. And I thought that's why he was slowing down, but it was actually his back legs. And so we did an epidural, and I think that made him worse. I honestly do, because at first he pepped up, and then when I went to the recheck, they pressed on something, and he was just like, he never was the same after that. And so it became a flip-flop between Sniper and Kaiser as they both got worse. And Sniper finally, in March, we finally said, okay, look, we got to go to the oncologist and figure this out. And so they drained fluid from his lungs, and they got 1,500 milliliters. He was drowning. I mean, he was going to die. But they got the fluid out, and he bounced back. He was like a brand new dog. And meanwhile, we're still struggling with Kaiser. And at this time, I thought we didn't have much time left with him because he was getting to the point where he couldn't walk. He was losing bowel control when he strained in certain situations. I was taking him to physical therapy. I was probably spending, a couple grand a month between the two of them in medical care, physical therapy, laser therapy, all that stuff. But I didn't mind it, because these were my boys. And so I was on a constant back and forth between physical therapy and taking Sniper. And in May, the cough came back and it kept getting worse. And you could tell he was really agitated. It was very hard for Sniper to breathe. And so I took him back, actually took him back on Memorial Day, and they drained another liter of fluid from him. And the vet's like, hey, this time he didn't bounce back. It's not looking good. And I said, well, maybe it'll get better tomorrow. Maybe it's just he's tired. And so, but he didn't. And he progressively got to the point where a week later, and my last drill at Tyndall, I was there instead of here with him, but he got to the point where he couldn't breathe. And the last day with him, he stayed up all night. He wasn't sleeping. And I got up in the morning. The day before, I called the vet and I said, hey, can we drain the fluid again? And they said, no, that's it. There's nothing that's going to help him at this point. And then that last night, he was up all night and he was in pain and he was struggling to breathe. And he was just kind of keeping his head tilted sideways just to try to breathe. And I walked outside that morning and he was outside. You could just tell he knew it was his last day because he was just standing there, just panting. He was just so restless. And so I called my stepmom and said, hey, I think today's the day. And she rushed over here. And she got to him and she said, if you don't do this today, it's going to happen on its own. Because, she's a nurse. And she's like, I've seen this before. He doesn't have long. And I hated it. Like I was on the floor crying, trying not to make this decision because I didn't want to, anything to not have to do it. But we loaded him up, took him to the vet, and she agreed. She looked at him and said, that's it. And I was there with him when I said goodbye. And it was hard. I came back to Luna and Sniper and was like, man, I've still got you guys. But in that following month, Kaiser got even worse. He'd had a couple epidurals. They didn't do anything anymore. We kept doing the physical therapy, and I knew it was the end when the physical therapist called me and he said, hey, look, we're not going to charge you for physical therapy anymore. We're just going to charge you to wrap his feet because he was dragging his knuckling. And I'd gotten that wheelchair, and we only used it a couple times, but he couldn't tolerate it. Even with the wheelchair, he couldn't walk very far. It didn't do anything for him. And they said, we're not going to charge you for the rehab sessions. We're just going to tape him and laser him because he's not doing anything for us. He just can't. And I knew that was pretty close to the end. And we tried acupuncture. I was going to acupuncture. And he just kept progressively getting worse. Not just bowel control, but then he was starting to have bladder control. He was peeing on himself. He was just barely making it outside and peeing, or not getting up at all and peeing in his bed. And you could tell he was in pain, and he was on a cocktail of stuff. All the meds he was taking to try to relieve his pain. I've had, herbal stuff. We're just trying everything we possibly could. And so I took him to acupuncture one day, and he came back, and I just looked at him and I said, he can't do this anymore. And that next morning, I could just tell he was doing the same thing Sniper was doing. He was panting. He was restless. He was miserable. And I just knew that it was over. I just knew it. He just saw it. He saw it in his eyes. He just was begging to be let go. And I called my stepmom again and said, hey, this is it. And she said, I'm coming. And I said, thank you. And again, at first I thought it was going to be easier because I was used to it, but it wasn't. It was the exact same thing. And I called the vet and they said, well, hey, look, maybe we look at him. Maybe there's something we can do, something else we can maybe. And I was like, okay, cool. We're bringing him. And I got there and the vet looked at him and she said, you're right. That's it. That's all we can do. So I was there for him when he died, or at least I thought I was. When they said his heart had stopped, I got up and left because I didn't want to see him like that. And I later found out that he hadn't quite passed just yet. But I went out, both times I went out and sat on there's some steps outside the vet, and I just cried. But this time, I know, some people don't believe in stuff, but the church bell started ringing, and I just knew, because that was about the time he died, when he finally died. And so we came back, and it's just me and Luna. So we've been adjusting to life together, just me and her. Going on a lot of walks. It's been real hot, so we have to go super early in the morning and super late at night because I don't want to wear her out. But she is losing weight finally because she got pretty obese, stealing their food. But yeah, it's very, very tough. So I guess the silver lining, I didn't want to leave her alone, and I had to go help the PIO with some stuff for the sheriff's office. I'm like, well, I'm gonna load her up and bring her, because I don't want her to be in the house. And we got to talking, and I thought of the idea of Luna doing some training. Obviously, she's not canine material or super sniff snuff canine material. But she is very healing and helpful. And so we got approval. She's going to go through therapy dog training. It's going to be sponsored by the National Police Association, which I'm very, very, very thankful and grateful for them for paying for that. And next week, or whenever, next week now, but whenever this video airs, she will start her training, and she will be a therapy dog, and she will be able to hopefully help people get through some hard times, whether it's within the agency or whether it's people out in the community, in public, hospitals, schools, whatever. We're going to turn this into something positive, and I'm going to spend more time with it. That's why I'm not getting another dog, because I don't want to leave another dog here while I'm out with Luna, and I want to do adventures with just her. But that's what happened. It's the hardest thing. I mean, losing my dad was tough, losing my mom was tough, but losing the boys, because you feel like a failure. Even though Kaiser was 12 years old, Sniper was 14, that's old for dogs their size. I mean, Kaiser at his peak was 100 pounds. I mean, he probably shouldn't have lived more than 8 to 10 years, and Sniper was about 55, 60 pounds, but they would have lived longer not for those things. But it's been tough. I mean, it's definitely taken its toll on me. Especially considering, all the stuff that happened with the military last year. And, that was kind of a rut for me and led to, not producing as many videos. So going forward for this channel, I'm going to try to document and vlog Luna's training and what we do with Luna and post it here. I think I'm going to move the race car stuff back to the other channel just for more exposure, opportunities to get sponsors, stuff like that. But yeah. It's been a crappy summer. If you'd have told me at the beginning of this year that I was going to lose both boys, I'd have said no way. And I wouldn't have wanted to continue this year because, Jesus. But here we are. And I miss them. They were the best dogs and boys I've ever had and known. And there's not a day goes by. It's funny because I go through times where I feel like I haven't grieved enough. And then something, I'll see something on Instagram or something, it'll just pop and I'll be a mess. But that's why the mental health thing on the other channel is so important, because, I've reached out to a lot of friends and they've been a lot of help. And Luna, Luna's my angel. She's the reason I am able to keep going, because I feel like she was sent for me to help me through this and to be here. And the timing just worked out perfectly that she was here for me. And I hope to be able to share her with other people that are in need and use her skills to help comfort people in their worst times. So, yeah. Sorry, I told you it wasn't going to be a happy video, but it is happy in that, we're going to do some cool stuff. But anyway, losing a dog is one of the hardest things you'll ever do. I'm sure losing a child is even worse, but this is my experience. So, not going to say hope you enjoyed it, but I appreciate you watching. Sorry it's been so long since I posted something. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.